Gracehoper. That's the biggest. That's the biggest one so far. See, I'm telling you, it's so big. That's what I'm going to go to Detroit when it's completed. I got to go there to see it. All right, you're going to back up.
They're going to put 2 more pieces on this
load?
Yes,
2 pieces right back. They'll put the leg sections on next. The Texas here. And the other truck will put the top section on.
Did it nick the piece or anything?
No, it just scratched the paint a little bit.
All right. 1. All right.
Gentleman that designed this.
Yes.
Very pretty. And,
well, I hope it goes together.
Oh, I don't think you'll have any trouble at all with the way you've got it designed. It's beautiful.
Even though they couldn't assemble the whole thing, you see the pieces higher than the ceiling here.
Yeah,
they've at least tried every connection. So.
Well, I've hauled every kind of material I think there is to haul. I've hauled missiles, overlength pipe, and overlength beams. This is the first time I ever hauled a piece of art. So
well, you're starting with a big one, because it must be one of the largest pieces that have been made in this country.
Heavy-duty angle.
Gracehoper weighs 35 tons when it's all put together, and I don't imagine that weighs, may weigh a quarter of that. See, he's got lots of room there now when he pulls out straight. He's got a good 6 inches on this side. There isn't any way in which you can say that I set out to do something which would eventually be called Gracehoper. That comes a good deal later on in the development of the thing. I named it that from Finnegan's Wake, as I have most pieces, more or less as association. Aside from the fact of this being my first piece of sculpture that has actually been located as freestanding sculpture, it is also the largest piece that I have ever made. And when the pieces arrive and are taken from the trucks by cranes and erected on the site, it will be the first time that I have actually seen the piece at its full scale. Of course, to have the pleasure of seeing such a large piece actually entirely finished simply by assembling it and possibly eventually giving it a final coat of paint or something like that, it's a very gratifying experience, or at least I look forward to it being a very gratifying experience since I've never had it before.
Once those three pieces are together, then the rest will pretty much follow. But in order to get the alignment of the plates, you know, they have to be...
Basically, we're going to be relying on you tomorrow and the next day to show us what piece should be erected first without making a proper evaluation of this. We feel that you have already taken care of this. I don't think it's going to hurt anything because...
No, you may still
it's going
want
to be projected over anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
They're going to have the adhesive on the end, so...
You know how deep you think we sunk in?
What are they, about
4 feet. Well, actually, a little bit more than that. I asked for 4 feet, but I think they've gone about 5 feet down.
Watch your feet, Tom. You clear there, Tommy?
I don't engineer these pieces. That is, when I make them, I don't even have any idea of which is to be the top or bottom or the sides or anything like that. I do it more as if I were making something in my lap. And when I get it to a point where it seems to be taking on some form, if it seems a little bit too complex, I take some pieces away, or if another part seems not too bare in the sense that anything can ultimately be too bare, but rather not too bare in relation to the other pieces that have been, the other parts of the pieces which have already been completed, I begin to feel what should probably be the base of the piece. You've got to realize that that's all a very subjective and intuitive process. It isn't as though I have some idea of a piece and then go about fabricating it in a way that I know to be stable. Now, in small pieces, that factor may be somewhat deceptive because in the little cardboard maquettes, there's almost nothing at play but gravity itself. However, in a large piece like this, where you have relatively very large surfaces, you're subjecting the piece to wind loads and other factors, people climbing on the piece and other things that could possibly cause it to topple.
Get a couple of bolts just to hold everything and then loose, you know.
So just take 2 bolts and 2 nuts in. If you make them, that's great. Then we can hand them in to you as we go. Or else take 1 box of bolts and enough nuts, this many nuts. All right? 3. Okay.
This certainly is the most complicated, tricky part. These first three pieces.
What, these first three pieces?
Oh yeah. The others are huge and bigger, more spectacular, but they'll go on more easily.
To some extent.
Did you see the little escape hatch? What is it? The little cover plate where they remove and the man climbs out at the end. So only so big.
That's for the last piece, the top piece.
When it's all together, that's where the people get out.
We decided we'd be real careful not to leave any skeletons in there when this is all done.
Because of the weight distribution, we want to short, because this 7-ton now will project over this way here, and it would create too much of a bearing on the front two anchor bolts. So for this reason now we're shoring this, because this 7-ton piece will come on here, and the projection of the weight now is more in the center. So it's just a precautionary measure. Which is a safety is what it is.
It's what?
It's a safety.
This is Sam Wagstaff. I've asked him to come to talk with me about the development of some of these things because Sam was the first person to exhibit any of the sculpture which I have done.
When I saw Tony's work, it was very, very hard to get to. It was very tough. It seemed very uningratiating, very stingy, very, minimal was the word at the time. And it was grating on the eye. But that's what one looks for. Certain agents in the music world talk about the minute they see a freak, they sign him up because, and the freakier the better. Well, in art, somewhat the same way. The thing that really grates you, that you haven't seen before, that you've find the newness in, there's something. Whether you like it or not, it's not a question of enjoying it. It's a question of having your imagination piqued by it, having your whole being piqued by it in a sense. And Tony's work did that for me very much because it brought my idea of sculpture to a place where it had not been before. Essentially, that's what one's looking for as the artist who expands the aesthetic.
I'd like to show the sequence I followed in making Gracehoper because it's not very logical, and in fact the particular track, some of the work has developed along very logical lines, and others have come together simply by manipulating the geometrical elements from which they've made. It's not made with any distinct idea of demonstrating a particular kind of form, but rather is a collection of a lot of pieces that went into pieces that had been made previously and which were assembled in this way largely out of convenience. That is, if we think of these little units, these small components from which the pieces have actually been made, we can see that they represent a great deal of fluidity, and it's very hard to stick to any specific axial development, or it's hard to have a premeditated form, premeditated idea of what is actually going to take place. It's very easy for me to put together something that has a geometric base like that because I can foresee what will take place when I manipulate the components in this way. However, a piece like this one is, as you see, it resembles it resembles parts of a spitball, and actually you can see that it could be filled out in the same way to make a large tetrahedron. However, the shape here doesn't have any kind of geometric necessity or clarity. It's a very misshapen piece. It doesn't represent any final form in the way that we think of when we think of cubes or anything of that sort. Now, when I started to make more pieces, I was again confronted with the problem of dealing with something that would control and discipline the form. And I came upon a method of doing this that might not seem a perfectly rational way to do it, but it at least made it possible to make some interesting pieces, and pieces that did have some kind of cohesion. And that is, after making a maquette such as this one, I would either have another maquette more or less of the same size made, or I would go directly to a mock-up. And that means that I no longer had any specific use for this original maquette. So I would take a razor and just cut some of these components apart and use the whole cluster of components as a form of composition. This blob, this clump, was used in this piece, the piece that followed immediately. The snake is out, and the third piece in the series called Willie. And it's possible to see this same cluster in those three pieces. Now, after the mock-up, the plywood mock-up of Willie had been made, I again took these components. In that case, I did it the same night, and working on a low coffee table, I took some of the clusters of components from Willie and putting them together with still other additions, came out with Gracehoper. Well, there are a lot of people who feel that Gracehoper is too confused, too complex, and I admit that it is confused and complex, but I feel that there isn't any way that I could have not carried this sequence to that extent. The explanation of how this piece led to those other pieces. You see, I think that's a sort of Dadaist way of working, the way of taking clusters that don't have any plastic organization on their own and putting them together in this way. It doesn't indicate any kind of purpose. It doesn't indicate any direction. I think that this process has disturbed a lot of people, and to tell you the truth, it disturbed me quite a bit. I think that I'm less ready to accept the ones that are clearly irrational in the beginning, and it takes me some time to get used to them. And I think that that's been true in Sam's case also, that at first he didn't like Gracehoper, and then one day he saw it, and he said that he saw it in an entirely different way, and he began to think of it in a more positive way than he had in the past.
Gracehoper is entirely different mystery. It has the mystery of its animal nature, its constructed nature, its size, its shadow and light effect, its passageway. It's interesting when Tony says that the next piece past Gracehoper was to be cave. Well, in a sense, Gracehoper is a cave too. There are passageways going through these overhanging tree trunks. And as he was talking before, the Dada, it's a curious word, I've never heard him use that about the thing, but it's irrationality. You know, the subconsciousness of that thing, which really speaks from one subconscious to another. I'm sure there are many, many levels which we haven't been able to Geiger counter yet, where art says things that are subliminal. And that piece could be frightening. It could also be joyous as a banner flying in the wind. But it has its macabre, sober, glowering look.
Right now they're aligning the holes with roll pins on the inside flanges that gets bolted, and then they're going to bolt it up. We're not going to cut it loose until everything is bolted on it.
Swing it around and then we can steady it from here. We gotta go off some.
I remember that I unconsciously cringed somewhat when I passed Willie, because I thought that it was certainly not within the canon of what we tend to think of as either rational or as having been already accepted by what we think of as the tradition of academic art. And it took me quite a long time, and I remember that whenever I showed it to people, I would tend to apologize for it because I thought that it was something very peculiar. I don't feel that way as much about Gracehoper, but I do think that it's rather outlandish in a lot of ways. I think that it's certainly something that I would associate with. I don't happen to be afflicted by nightmares, but I would think that it would look like someone's nightmare, if not mine. I guess that the reason that it's not my nightmare is because it's out on the lawn of the Detroit Museum.
All right, I'll pull it in to you, John. All right, hold that. All right, let me slack off a little bit, see what happens, all right? Huh?
have that clay model here yesterday morning. Really, the first idea didn't hit me on the assembly until 20 minutes after 12 yesterday.
I think it's the right place for it.
I think so too. I think that was a very wise decision.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Well, it's a marvelous job, so thanks very much for staying with us for the day.
Thank you, sir. It's been our privilege.
We picked up a lot of funny angle things, but this is the ultimate. It's beautiful, though, really.
Well, please thank the men for me.
I sure will.
As the work approached culmination, it separated itself more and more from me, and now has a life of its own. It's part of the life of the city of Detroit now. I think people have a very strong need to categorize things. I would be somewhat disappointed if I felt that people could too easily categorize it as a piece of sculpture. I would rather that they raise some skeptical questions as to whether it really constitutes sculpture or things of that kind. Things that I haven't answered yet. When I saw it, I was not only quite shocked, but I thought that there was something rather shameful about it. It seemed very peculiar, and it seemed like something that people would want to avoid or get away from in some sense. I like the idea of their being mystified. I think that mystery can be a very potent aspect of experiencing any art. I think that a sense of mystery runs throughout the art of the ages, and I think it's one of its ways in which it comes closest to life. That is, in the same way that we feel a great sense of mystery before the experience of living itself, one of the ways in which art parallels life is that it does have this kind of mystery connected with it. In American work for the last 30 or so years, this other element of the specific size has come to mean a great deal. Just why it should be that particular size, for instance, I think adds to the mystery of the piece, so that I would say that the mystery actually carries over into the piece as actually fabricated, and isn't something that resides exclusively in the forms and relationship of forms that make up the piece. It's not possible for me to know just where the limits of something like this begin or end. I think that it's possible that it's for the future to determine whether a thing is really part of what we at this moment think of as art or think of as sculpture.